Thank you all so much for being here. According to a 2016 report by the Economic Policy Institute, my home state of Connecticut is second only to New York in terms of statewide income inequality. In order to address pay discrimination and income inequality, we need the data. So, Chair Dhillon, in your responses to several of the Senate Help Committee Ranking Member Murray's questions during your September confirmation hearings, you stated, and I quote, "Pay discrimination is a serious issue and an appropriate focus of the EEOC efforts. I believe that transparency of pay data is a useful tool." Do you still believe that transparency of pay data is a useful tool?
Yes, I do.
In that same confirmation hearing, in response to Ranking Member Murray's question, he asked, and I quote, "Will each of you commit to me that you will make finalizing a transparent pay data collection by the EEOC a priority and that it will be finished in a timely manner?" To which you responded yes. Do you still hold that belief to be true?
Yes, I do.
So, given that you have discontinued the component 2, will you be conducting a pilot program so that we can continue to collect pay data?
Congresswoman, thank you for your question. As we are continuing to collect component 2 pay data, to be clear. We're under court order to do so, and the EEOC is complying with that court order and will do so long as the order is in effect. What the EEOC has done is, pursuant to the Paperwork Reduction Act, the PRA, we have indicated that we are not asking OMB to grant us the authority to continue to collect component 2 pay data in the future. Instead, as we indicated in the PRA, what we intend to do is go through a Title VII notice rulemaking process so that we can solicit input and develop a type of data collection that meets our obligations under the PRA, which is to minimize the burden to the entities who are required to respond, while matching that burden against the utility of the data to the EEOC. I do think that a pilot would be part of that, and in fact, that was one of the recommendations made by the National Academy of Sciences in 2012. The EEOC did not adopt that recommendation and did not conduct a pilot study in connection with the 2016 PRA, but I believe that a pilot study would be appropriate.
And you've also stated here today, and in the Notice of Information Collection that was published, it says that there is an undue burden for collecting this type of information. Are you aware that the EEOC went through 6 years of analysis, significant interagency consultations, and multiple lengthy notice and comment period during the issuing of Component 2? Of Component 2. Have you reached out and used any of that data, or contacted the outside vendors or any people who collected this information previously?
Well, Congresswoman, I reviewed the comments that were submitted in 2016. It was not a notice and comment rulemaking process under the APA, as I believe it should have been. Instead, it was a 60-day PRA notice, and in response to that, groups submitted comments, and I have reviewed those comments. And the comments pointed out concerns that the respondent community had, both with the utility and with the burden. In terms of the burden, in 2016, the EEOC calculated the burden at being approximately $53 million. But what they did was they calculated the burden at the employer level. So they treated every employer the same, regardless of size, regardless of the number of employees that they would have to report on, regardless of the configuration of their payroll systems, their HRIS systems, if they even had those kinds of systems in place. They assumed the burden to every employer was the same. Fast forward to the PRA notice that we submitted last week. At my direction, our data scientists and our statisticians redid the burden calculation, and they calculated the burden per report that an employer needed to complete. Because in some cases, if an employer has more than one establishment, they have to file multiple reports. And if an employer is going to submit additional reports, it stands to reason that the burden is higher. And in fact, when that calculation was rerun, it was determined that the burden was 10 times higher than had originally been calculated. I would also note that the burden analysis that was conducted as part of the PRA notice that was submitted last week is consistent in methodology with what the EEOC previously did up until 2016. In 2016, the EEOC changed its approach. We went back to the prior approach in connection with the Federal Register notice.
Thank you.